Hey Exiles, Jerry Bean here. I hope everyone's having a great time in 0.3 like I am. So today we'll be diving into one of my favorite builds this league, the Ancestral Cry Staggering Palm Invoker. This is a super fun, high-speed build that uses Staggering Palms to sling out projectiles like a machine gun, all while being massively boosted by Ancestral Cry. The build takes advantage of Hollow Palm technique to stack as much evasion as possible, scaling our attack speed to insane levels. Currently, I am up to 29 attacks per second in combat with Tempest Flurry. Any more than that, and the game crashes. Now, on paper the build has pretty low effective HP due to all of that evasion stacking, but in practice, thanks to the new deflection mechanic that were added in 0.3, as well as the screen-wide freezes, shocks, blinds, and stuns that this build offers, enemies are often locked down before they can even hit you. The build also fully takes advantage of charging fusion by constantly consuming frenzy, endurance, and power charges for a huge boost in damage and survivability. And the best part? This build applies every elemental damage types, from lightning, cold, fire, and even a huge chunk of chaos, often filling the screen with flashy effects while deleting everything in sight. Although currently the footages I showcase here are all with high investment, it's actually a quite league start friendly build, as I league started 0.3 with this idea in mind. From Act 1 it feels smooth and it scales all the way into endgame, clearing pinnacle bosses and even handling the highest tier of Simulacrum. So whether you're blasting through early maps or crushing endgame content, this build has you covered. So before we dive into the details, I want to quickly mention that I've put together a fully written guide on Mobalytics. It covers all the different variations of this build step by step, from the early mapping version through T15s into the Ancestral Cry transition, and finally the fully juiced Shattering Palm endgame setup. So if you want a detailed progression path or something to reference while you're playing, definitely check out the link in the description. Alright, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's start with one of the core skills of this build, Ancestral Cry. So what is this skill and why is it so good? Ancestral Cry is a conditional Warcry skill that boosts your other attacks. You can obtain it from a level 13 skill gem, though it does require 92 strength to equip. Here's how it works. You can only use Ancestral Cry once you've built up 100 glory through igniting with other skills. Once it's activated, it consumes all your endurance charges, and in return, you get a boosted duration on the effect. So what's the actual benefit? During its uptime, all of your attacks are ancestrally boosted, which means 30% more damage, 25% increased area of effect, and your attacks target 2 additional enemies. That is a massive DPS boost for this build. And the best part is how it synergizes with every single one of our core active skills. From Staggering Palm, Tempest Flurry, Falling Thunder, and even Shattering Palm. They all benefit directly from this buff. As long as Ancestral Cry is active, the damage and clear potential of this build skyrockets. And that's just one part of the skill. On top of that, it also triggers Volcanic Step and Volcanic Eruptions while it's active, which not only looks pretty cool, but also adds even more DPS and AoE clear that scales very well with Tempest Flurry. So bottom line, Ancestral Cry isn't just a side buff, it's a core engine of the build, supercharging every single attack that we do. Alright, before we talk about how we build up glory to trigger Ancestral Cry, let's take a look at 2 of the other key skills that make this whole setup work, Staggering Palm and Tempest Flurry. So Staggering Palm is an actually pretty straightforward skill. Whenever you stun an enemy with it, you gain a buff that makes your other quarterstaff strike skills shoot out physical oriented wind projectiles. Now here's where it gets really fun. Because we're scaling Tempest Flurry's attack speed, currently hitting up to 29 attacks per second, and in turn shooting out projectiles for every attacks, that means we're firing off 29 projectiles per second. The synergy between Staggering Palm and Tempest Flurry is just insane, especially paired with the Nova projectile support gem, which can instantly turn this into a screen clearing ability. But it doesn't stop there. With the right support gems such as the Armor Breaks 3 and Armor Explosion, as well as Ignite and Fire attunement, we can convert some of that into fire damage, and once we do that, those projectiles start igniting enemies almost instantly. Why does that matter? Going back to our previous topic, because ignites feed directly into building up glory, and the more glory we generate, the more consistently we can activate Ancestral Cry, which, as we have seen, is the centerpiece of this build's power. Oh, and lastly, I forgot to mention that because we are using Armor Breaks 3 on Staggering Palm, we're constantly generating endurance charges that will be used by Ancestral Cry, boosting its duration, as well as being consumed by Charging Fusion. Alright, now let's move on and talk about how we're going to generate power charges, which we'll use with Charge Staff and to supercharge our Falling Thunder single target damage. In patch 0.3, GGG introduced a new line of lineage support gems, and one of the most important for us here is called Alepht's Chime. What this gem does is pretty simple. It consumes all of the combo stacks that we've built from our quarterstaff strike skills like Tempest Flurry, and then converts them into power charges. Basically, for every 10 combo, you gain 1 power charge. So now for the juicy tech. We run Culmination 2 support on our quarterstaff strike, which let us actually start building combo. Then we add in Alepht's Chime, so that once we activate quarterstaff strike, all that combo gets consumed and instantly turned into power charges. In practice, we're just running around spamming Tempest Flurry, building up tons of combo stacks thanks to its crazy attack speed. Then, when we're ready, we press quarterstaff strike, cash in those combos, and boom! We got a full stack of power charges. From there, those charges can feed directly into both Charge Staff and Falling Thunder. The faster your Tempest Flurry, the more combo you generate, and the more power charges you can turn into insane burst damage. It's a really smooth synergy that ties your entire single target rotation together, and because we're slotting this tech into our quarterstaff strike, we don't need to allocate another skill gem slot to generate the charges. Alright, enough yapping, let's get into a map and showcase the basic rotation for this build. So we start the map with Staggering Palm. So we go into the first pack and hold down Staggering Palm. This will naturally stun the enemy and activate the Staggering Palm buff, giving us the projectile effect for our other quarterstaff strikes. Next, we start spamming Tempest Flurry to quickly stack combos thanks to its very high attack speed. So this will fuel both our combo to charge conversion and our DPS. Once we have enough combo, use our quarterstaff strike with Alepht's Chime to cash in for the power charges, which we will use it to buff up Charge Staff. As we keep moving through the map, we mainly use Shattering Palm as our clearing ability, while using Tempest Flurry as the traversal skill, which also does a lot of damage thanks to Staggering Palm projectiles. With enough combo again from Tempest Flurry, we can now spend them on Falling Thunder, buffed with Mantra of Destruction, which leads us to another cool tech. So for every enemy killed with a scaled buff by Mantra of Destruction, we get a stack of Purple Flame of Charula, which is a 7% chaos damage gain. We'll go more into detail as to how we can leverage this extra chaos damage buff and further boost our DPS thanks to the other new unique lineage gems. And that's pretty much the basic rotation of mapping. We'll definitely be using Ancestral Cry whenever it's up for the massive DPS boost. Thanks to Armor Break, we can pretty much guarantee that we will always have 3 endurance charges, which will give us 30 seconds of buff window. Another tip to generate a large amount of glory is to use Unbound Avatar, which lets us inflict elemental alignments much easier, which includes Ignite for Ancestral Cry and Freeze for Shattering Palm. And lastly, as we can see from the clip here, we're also generating frenzy charges consistently thanks to Shattering Palm freezes, which in turn will allow Charging Fusion to further boost our attack speed. This build isn't just great for mapping, it's also a very strong boss killer. Thanks to Culmination 2 support, we can stack up massive amounts of combo and then expend them for huge bursts of damage with Falling Thunder. The bossing rotation is super simple. So first we use Tempest Flurry to quickly build up combo. Second, convert that combo into charges with Quarterstaff Strike, and then lastly, drop Falling Thunder to unleash all that stored power, often one-shotting bosses outright. Alright, now let's move on to our skill gem setup. So we'll start with Quarterstaff Strike. As explained before, our core setup is with Culmination 2 and Aetiff's Chime for charge generation. Moving on to Unbound Avatar, we'll have cooldown recovery and prolonged duration. For our core skill Staggering Palm, we'll have Armor Break 3, which shreds armor and gives us endurance charges. Nova Projectile for the huge screen right clear. Stun 2, which makes stun more reliable and activates the palm buff. Armor Explosion, so when we break armor, enemy will explode for damage and helps glory generation for Ancestral Cry. We have Nito's Embrace here, which converts chaos damage into armor break and bonus physical damage that we gain from the chaos damage scaling. So this synergizes very well with Mantra of Destruction and Flames of Chayula. As for Tempest Flurry, it is our main traversal skill as well as combo builder. We do not care about the damage from this skill as much as the other active skills, so it is completely okay to use a very low level Tempest Flurry in order for us to sustain mana. For support gems, we have Efficiency 2, which reduces mana cost to sustain high APS. We use Practice Combo to build more combo for charge generation. We use Rapid Attack 2 to boost our attack speed. Rage 3, which gains Rage on hit, plus 15 more attack speed when not at max Rage. Lastly, we have Rigwald's Ferocity, which adds another 20% more attack speed in weapon set 1. Alright, so moving on to Falling Thunder. So this is the ability that we use to maintain high stacks of Flames of Chayula, as well as our boss killer. For supports, we are using Culmination 2, which scales damage off combos built with Tempest Flurry. Ambrosia, which adds a really big lightning damage DPS boost based off of our maximum mana fast charges. Using Rage Forge here to consume Rage for 40% more bonus attack damage. We're also using Nova Projectile here, which is great for mapping clear, helps us maintain a high stacks of Flames of Chayula. And lastly, I am using Rakia's Flow here. It is the Besting Slot support gem. However, it is completely optional. We can use something like a Close Combat 2 or Primal Armament instead. Next, we have Shattering Palm, which is our main AoE/clearing/freezing ability, which also acts as a very nice utility skill that helps us bridge over small gaps and ledges. For supports, we're using Overreach for increased AoE explosions. We're using Exploit Weakness, which benefits from armor breaks created by Shattering Palm. We're also using Elemental Armament 2 for more elemental attack damage. We're also using Frozen Spike here, which creates ice shards that detonate for extra cold damage on kill. Lastly, I'm using Toe's Stillness, the new lineage support gem, which allows our chaos damage to also contribute to freeze buildup, on top of the 20% more cold damage gain based on extra chaos damage. Pretty straightforward for charge staff. I'm using Prolonged Duration, Calling Strike, Innervate, Lightning Attunement, and lastly, Ashes Radiance, which takes advantage of the extra chaos to lightning damage conversion. As for Ancestral Cry, I am taking Prolonged Duration, Magnify Area for bigger AoE for Volcanic Steps and Volcanic Eruption. Same idea with Close Combat 2, which boosts our eruption damage. Also taking Heightened Charges, which can buff us up to a minute of duration with 3 endurance charges. And lastly, I am taking Zolspire, same idea. The extra chaos scaling from Chains of Chayula will greatly boost the damage. Really straightforward for Mantra of Destruction. We'll just be taking an extra level of Chaos Mastery, as well as the prolonged duration for Flames of Chayula. As for Spirit Gems, I am taking Combat Frenzy, which generates frenzy charges from freezing with Shattering Palm. Taking Ghost Dance for an extra defensive layer, which converts evasion into energy shield sustain. And lastly, I am taking Charge Regulation, which constantly consumes endurance, frenzy, and power charges. So for endurance charges, it gives us 20% more global defense. For frenzy, it gives us 15% more attack speed. We don't really care about power charges since we're not crit based and none of our skill and passives are spec into that. And any extra spirit that you may have can be spent on a few very useful utility gems, such as Clarity for consistent mana regeneration, Cannibalism for life recovery on kill, Herbalism for boosted recovery from life flasks. I recommend aiming for around 200 Total Spirit, which is pretty easy to reach thanks to one of the Invoker Ascendancy nodes. Before we wrap up here, just one last important point I want to mention. All of our Hollow Palm technique damage scales directly from the level of our skill gems, so skill gem is your biggest damage priority. Here is the order that I recommend. Starting with Staggering Palm, we want to get this as high as possible first, as it is our main clearing ability. Then Falling Thunder, and finally Shattering Palm. If you focus on upgrading these gems, you'll notice a huge jump in damage at every stage of progression. Alright, let's now talk about the passive tree setup for this build. The main idea is pretty simple. We're going to path to every major attack speed notable we can reach, since attack speed is the lifeblood of this build. I won't get into the nitty-gritty for every notable, so I'll just do a quick highlight of the ones that are important for this build. So let's start with Disorientation. We take this notable that gives 25 increase in damage against blinded enemies, since Staggering Palm projectiles blind on hit. We also take Chakra of Rhythm, which give us more combo generation and attack speed, which is a perfect synergy for Tempest Flurry and charge generation. Also Chakra of Impact, which give us extra attack damage per combo consumed, plus flat attack damage, which is huge for Falling Thunderburst. We also path to Lightning Quick, one of the best generic speed nodes, as well as damage nodes. Around 14% more attack speed with its small passives included. As for our defensive layers, we're taking Enhanced Reflexes as well as Bestial Skin for a very big evasion boost. We're also taking Chakra of Thought for damage taking from mana before life, plus another chunk of attack speed as long as we're not low on mana. Spectral War is pretty much necessary for this build as well, as it gives us extra maximum energy shield for every point of evasion on our body armor, which is another great way to layer survivability on top of our evasion stacking. This build really comes alive with the right unique jewels as well. So let's take a look at the From Nothing Diamond that we have allocated to Crimson Assault Keystone. Around the radius of this keystone we can find a notable called Frenzy Beer, which give us 30% more increased attack damage as well as 10% more skill speed if we consumed a Frenzy Charge recently. Another great combo is the Escape strategy as well as Careful Consideration, which together give us about 70% more increased evasion in general. Unleashed Fire is also a very good notable as it boosts our melee stun build-up and makes projectiles deal 70% more damage to heavily stunned enemies, which is a perfect synergy with Staggering Palm. Another great addition is the Heart of the Well Abyss Jewel that is introduced during this patch. So we want to look for gain percent of damage as extra fire, as this will massively improve ignites from Staggering Palm projectiles, which in turn let us charge up Ancestral Cry much more frequently. The Megalomaniac Diamond is also a really great jewel that can shine very well into this build. Because we dip into multiple elements plus chaos while also scaling empowered attacks from Ancestral Cry, there is a ton of really good strong and good notables to grab around the tree. I've made a custom POE trait filter that lists the best ones for this build. If you're interested, definitely check that out. Invoker is the ascendancy of choice here, as it ties everything together. It also has the advantage of a very good starting point, as it is close to a lot of the very good speed notables around the tree. As for the notables, we'll be definitely taking Unbound Avatar, as it's a general huge DPS boost, which helps with ignites and faster glory generation for Ancestral Cry. We're also taking I Am the Thunder for a big bossing damage boost, since we're speccing to Falling Thunder as our single target killer. I'm also taking I Am the Blizzard, which helps with stronger freezing power for safer mapping. And last but not least, Lead Me Through Grace, the most important notable here. The free spirit that we get from this notable makes scaling much easier. And that's the quick breakdown of the passive tree and ascendancy setup. Speed, combo, scaling, defenses, and jewel synergies all working together. Alright, lastly, let's move on to the gear. I won't be covering every single slot in detail since gear can vary a lot between players, but I'll highlight the key priorities and what really matters for this build. As for our core defenses priority, as well as scaling attack speed as much as we can from follow palm technique, every piece of gear should stack as much evasion rating as possible. We also need to make sure that each item, except for gloves, also has deflection rating. This is an important layer of defense for this build. To scale our DPS, we need to look for plus level of all melee skills on both our gloves and amulet. Ideally, we want to try to get +3 on our amulet and as well as +2 on our gloves. Those are the most important damage stats for this build setup. Beyond that, flat rolls on our damage are the key. So we want to get flat rolls on both our rings and gloves, prioritizing in the order of physical, fire, cold, and lightning. Also, we want to make sure that at least one of our rings has percentage of physical attack damage leached as mana. This will be pretty critical for sustaining mana during mapping and bossing. One other gear consideration I want to point out is that since we're traveling via Tempest Flurry, we don't really need movement speed here, so we can focus entirely on evasion rating. As for charms, take Thawing Charm for freeze immunity, take Stone Charm for stun immunity, and Chaos Charm if we're not Chaos res capped. As for Flask, we want to get our life flask with instant recovery since we have a pretty low EHP. And as for our mana flask, because we're using Ambrosia with Falling Thunder, we want to try to grab a mana flask with as much charges as it has. One luxury upgrade to consider is a double socketed glove with increased effect of socketed items. My version grants about 32% increased attack speed with the socketed runes, which is a massive DPS boost as we scale. Keep in mind, this is a very expensive item to buy, and crafting it yourself can be pretty RNG heavy. It is not required, but it is an excellent late game investment if you have the resources. And that's pretty much the overview of the gear setup. We want to focus on evasion plus deflection for defenses, plus melee levels and flat damage for offense, and the right charms and flat setup to round things out. Just before we close out, I want to add a small section to talk about mana sustain, since it is a crucial part of the build, and using Tempest Flurry can quickly drain our mana before we can keep it up. Aside from the mana leech that we can get on our ring, we also make sure that we want to get some sort of mana recovery on kill stat. So there are a couple ways to get that. Either for a mod on your rings, or you can check out the Heart of the Well jewel, which can also roll this mod. There are also certain notables around the passage tree that we can grab using the Megalomaniac Diamond Jewel. Or, directly we can path it to the Siphon notable on the passive tree. As long as we can secure at least one of these recovery sources, your mana will feel pretty smooth across both mapping and bossing. Alright, thank you so much for sticking with me through this guide. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch all the way through. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like. If not, leave a comment and we can talk about it. I also want to give a huge shout out to the amazing members of the Discord community who have contributed to this build. Their feedback, ideas, and iterations have been a massive help in shaping into what it is today. I wouldn't have been able to put this together without them. Lastly, if you have any questions, suggestions, or want to chat about the build, please feel free to drop a comment below or join the Discord. I'm always happy to hear from others who are testing, tweaking, and pushing the build even further. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.